During my return journey, I drafted a letter of resignation. Though my family had come to be dependent upon the money I sent them, the severance package I was likely to receive would tide them over for a little while, time enough for me to find some other employment. I delayed reporting back to the barracks for a further 2 days. During this time, I asked around town if there was any work going nearby. I found out that there was a farm 10 miles away that could use an extra pair of hands come springtime. I presented myself to the owners and they agreed to take me on. Fosca's words about making the most of my time on this earth had haunted me, and I knew in my heart that I would never truly be happy until I left military service. I felt hungry for change in a way that I hadn't since the glory days of my youth. Yet, at the same time, I felt a terrible responsibility toward the woman who had awakened in me this desire to reinvent myself. She had very little time left, and I could not abandon her to face the worst ravages of her illness alone. Both duty and affection demanded that I stay by her side a while longer. So I set about ensuring that once I left the army, I could reside somewhere that would allow me to visit her regularly. I felt vindicated in this resolution when, upon my return, the doctor informed me that not only had Fosca come down with a common cold, she had been gripped by a succession of more violent seizures. During one, she landed face down on a slab of stone pavement, then thrashed about so wildly that she wound up dislocating a shoulder. Now, I have told you that the woman's appearance resembled that of a corpse at the best of times. But these latest injuries made Fosca even more hideous to behold. With her nose bent out of shape, 6 of her front teeth knocked out, her blackened eyes swollen, and a large lump on her forehead, it was a struggle for me not to weep at the sight of her, despite all the advance warning I received. Fosca?
Giorgio? Oh, Giorgio, my dear, do come in. Only do not sit too close to me. It would be a crying shame for you to come off sick leave only to pick up something else as soon as you've returned.
Fosca, I'm sorry to see you looking the worse for wear. I wish that I could have...
It's all right. There's nothing you could have done. And I did encourage you to go on this trip. Thank you for the letter. It was a great comfort to me. And though I must confess to being glad of your return, my sincerest condolences to you.
For what?
I presume your early return signifies that you were not able to persuade Clara to elope with you.
No, I wasn't. But we parted in an amicable fashion. Quite passionately, in fact.
You mean she let you have one more tumble for the road?
Yes, something like that.
How did it feel?
It was a surprisingly soothing experience. Balm for the pain of goodbye. Though the pain was not eliminated completely. Clara has expressed a wish that we remain friends after this. Initially I balked at the idea, but now I hope we can truly make it work.
I'm so envious. Often I have lain awake at night imagining that I was a girl again, and my Clara had said goodbye to me in that way. When she appears to me in fantasy like this, as my mind is halfway between sleep and wakefulness, I always imagine her whispering in my ear after she has pleasured me. She imparts some last profound words of wisdom to give me strength in the trials to come.
I hope that she tells you it does little good to dwell upon that which can never be, that you must live for today and make the most of what meagre pleasures the real world can provide. Like this present I brought for you from Milan. I was going to save it till Christmas, but under the circumstances, I think you've earned the right to open it now.
Oh, what could it be? Chocolate! The very thing I need most right now.
Wait, before you bite down on it, I should warn you, these ones have a creamy, liqueured centre. It somewhat resembles brandy custard. You do better to suck on it and slowly savour the taste. Eat too many at once, you'll get a bit tipsy.
A bit of tipsiness would be quite welcome right now, methinks. Oh, I could not imagine a more delicious route to intoxication than this. Oh, thank you, my darling. Why is it, I wonder, that the most wicked and ruinous pleasures this earth has to offer feel so heavenly? If our Lord God is so merciful and benevolent, why did he not ensure that the healthy and wholesome sources of nourishment were capable of provoking the same rapturous delight?
I've often wondered about that myself. It is one reason among many, mind, that I could never understand my father's unwavering devotion to God. His life of pious denial, back-breaking toil, and unthinking sacrifice never struck me as truly living. Yet I was told this is what it meant to walk in the footsteps of God. I've been thinking a lot about sin these last few weeks. I know that according to all the rules set down by God and man, I've done wrong in carrying on with this affair. A part of me does feel genuinely guilty about it. I was drawn to Clara in large part because of her exquisite purity, and the very act of loving her has destroyed that. Yet every moment we spent together felt somehow sacred. Our passion had a consecration of its own, unspoken, but all the more powerful for that. I imagine that it was the same for you and your Clara.
Yes, that was truly how it felt, but was I justified in this belief, or was it all simply an illusion? Sometimes I think that my...
Fosca? Oh, right.
Oh, thank you, my dear.
You all right?
No, I never am. I need to rest now, Giorgio. This sucker shall be my nightcap.
I'll leave you to your dreams. May they be pleasant.
Wait, before you go.
Yes?
See that pile of paper there on my dresser?
Uh-huh.
That is my Christmas present to you. The final draft of my memoir. I want you to be the first to read it. It's a gift, since I could never have finished it without all your support and guidance.
I shall read it presently. Thank you. And good night.
Good night, my beloved Giorgio.
The sheer quantity of paper in my hands astounded me. There must have been 120 pages there, easily. The thought that Fosca had written all this in less than a week, in the midst of great pain, with the use of only one arm, and with only one functioning eye, this was amazing in and of itself. But when I looked closely at her handwriting, I realized that these words, written with her left hand, were no more or less elegant than the samples of her right-handed cursive that I'd seen earlier. Just when I thought I could no longer be surprised by the awesome tenacity of this woman's mind, I stayed up late into the night, poring over the details of her life once more. She'd expanded upon all the pivotal moments that she'd related to me earlier, but this time she'd also included some humorous, light-hearted anecdotes from her childhood and balanced out the tragedy of her later years by going into detail about the evolution of her artistic accomplishments, launching into digressions about how this event or that affected her approach to composition and performance. Tucked away between the pages of her autobiography at random intervals were pages of sheet music for various sonatas that Fosca herself had composed, as well as notation for variations on the signature themes of her favourite composers. Pages of romantic poetry and sketches of various people and places dear to her heart were also scattered throughout the manuscript. I wish that I could say these were evidence of an underappreciated genius at work, but many of her musical compositions, from what I could make out of the notes on the page, struck me as so complex that it would take a pianist of superhuman dexterity to play them effectively. Her poetry had a sweet, almost cloying tone, yet much of the content was brazenly salacious. Her sketches were similarly shocking in their mixture of sugary sentimentality and perversely uninhibited sensuality. For instance, a poem waxing lyrical about a mother's blind devotion to her child, which grew more excessive and absurd with each stanza, was accompanied by an idealized portrait of her parents sitting up in bed. Both were naked from the waist up, and a sickly-looking premature baby, presumably the infant Fosca, was suckling at the woman's breast. There was a drawing of a teenage Fosca, lying naked beside her first love, amidst a pile of ornately rendered autumn leaves, their tongues entwined, each lightly fingering the sex of the other. Other imagery was simply shocking in its exaggerated bleakness, like several self-portraits of Fosca in the grip of a seizure, her expression a twisted caricature of the demented agony I'd witnessed firsthand, or the way in which she visualized her miscarriage, more blood flowing from her ruptured uterus than any woman could afford to lose in real life. Yet, there was a technical proficiency to all of this that could not be denied, which seemed a Herculean feat given her condition, and the fearless vehemence of her art commanded one's attention. As I put down the final page, blew out the candle beside my bed, and lay myself down to sleep, I pondered what kind of woman Fosca would be if she had been blessed with beauty and good health. With a shudder, I realized, if that were the case, I would find her impossible to resist. Though her volatile temperament, casual vulgarity, and wild, downright savage sexuality would still be deplorable, under certain circumstances, a woman with the right measure of looks and self-confidence could make such behaviour come across as saucy rather than merely grotesque. Considering her other qualities, Fosca's tastes were strikingly learned, albeit unsophisticated. Her artistic talents were undisciplined and lacking in emotional nuance, but impressive in their grasp of complex techniques and the sheer force of their passion. Her intellect was formidable, and her capacity for love as deep and boundless as the raging seas. I thought back upon my own behaviour toward her in the light of this. If a beautiful, healthy woman had thrown herself upon me as Fosca had, behaved toward me in a similar fashion, I would likely have exulted in her attentions. Indeed, I would probably have taken pride in the fact that a female of such fierce, untamed spirits was in thrall to me, that I, of all the men in the world, could soften such a savage heart. And given the fire that blazed in her words, my head spun to think of the intensity with which she would express her desire physically, if only she had a body that was capable of loving and being loved. But by the time Christmas came along, there was little improvement in her condition. Her epilepsy had receded to low tide once again, and the bruises upon her face were slightly smaller, but she was still sniffling and coughing. It was a strain for her to walk and talk. The doctor made a trip to Milan early in the morning, the eve before Christmas Eve, to acquire the finest turkey, ham, fresh vegetables, and red wine money could buy. Then he returned straight to the barracks that very day. Discipline and order were as absent from that Christmas party as they were at every social gathering organised by the Colonel. The men proceeded to get drunk as lords, whilst Fosca sat in a corner, swathed in blankets, nursing a mug of hot chocolate. The other revellers seemed oblivious to her existence, and I alone kept her company.
Oh, Christmas tree, how lovely are thy branches, not only green when summer's here, but in the coldest time of year. Oh, Christmas tree, how lovely are thy branches. Oh, Christmas tree, how sturdy God hath made thee. Thou bids us all place faithfully our trust in God unchangingly. Oh, Christmas tree, how sturdy God hath made thee.
You're not smiling, Giorgio. The tune was not to your liking?
No, Fosca, it's just that particular carol brings back a lot of memories for me. Clara, that's my sister. She used to sing it to me. And in German, too, just because she liked the sound of it that way. She was really more of a mother to me than my real mother.
How much older was she than you?
Only 7 years older, but she was the one who cooked most of the meals in our house. She was the one who mended my shirts when I tore them climbing trees. She was the one who tucked me in at night and told me bedtime stories. When the other children bullied me, she sought them out and beat them around the head with a stick.
Sounds like quite a formidable woman.
She was.
You speak of her in the past tense. Did she...
Oh, she's alive. It's just that things were never the same between us after I joined the army and she got married. I thought her husband was a dunderheaded louse, completely unworthy of her. She thought I was throwing my life away for a lost cause.
Will you ever reconcile with her?
I don't know, Fosca. I honestly don't know.
Sir, Colonel Carvino, a letter has arrived for you, sir, from the ministry.
Thank you, Apollina, that will be all.
Very good, sir.
A letter from the ministry, eh? And on Christmas Eve, well, I'll be damned. Captain Farina, over here.
Yes, sir?
It appears your letter of resignation has been approved. I must say I shall be sorry to see you go. You are a sturdy fellow. I commend you for your devotion to duty and for your compassion to my family in these troubled times.
Thank you, sir. That is much appreciated.
No! Giorgio! No! No! Do not leave me, my love, my comforter, my Giorgio! How can I go on living if I am never again to hear your sweet words of affection? No! Never again! To feel the sweet solace of you holding my hand! I cannot endure it! No!
Fosca, get up off your knees. Stop making a spectacle of yourself. Do as I say, woman. Get up. Get up now. Bitch. What are you looking at me like that for? I'm only doing what each of you people have wished that you could do at one time or another.
Speak for yourself, Colonel. I think that this woman has suffered enough already. You of all people should know that.
Her suffering, her misfortunes, her sickness. It is no excuse for her unwomanly behaviour. Her crass, perverted displays of lust, her selfishness, her sense of entitlement, the leech-like way she latches onto people and bleeds them dry. She has no right to make such outrageous demands of you, of anyone.
She has every right to make these demands of me. It is only natural under the circumstances.
What circumstances? What the devil do you mean?
She loves me. I love her.
Giorgio!
Fosca, I'm sorry you had to hear about it like this. I didn't expect the form to be processed so soon, or I would have told you earlier. I've asked about finding work locally so I'd still be able to see you regularly. I would never leave you. Your love is all that is true, all that I can place my faith in on this earth.
Oh, good God. The captain. He kissed Fosca. On the lips.
I'm not blind, idiot.
Captain, I know that you're a kind man, but you will do her no good by telling her lies.
Here, Fosca, wrap yourself up in this. Yes, that's it. Now lean back into my arms. I'm going to try and lift you. There. Do you feel secure? Your arm isn't hurting when I hold you like this?
No, my love.
What the blazes are you doing now?
I'm taking her away.
Away? Away where?
Away from you!
The hell you will! I order you to unhand her at once!
Fosca, I'll just put you down in the chair for a moment.
Giorgio.
Just trust me, alright?
Alright.
Colonel, I am no longer subject to your authority, and I am leaving here with Fosca whether you like it or not, so don't stand in my way.
You will cease this insolence immediately!
Oh, very well then, you leave me no choice.
My face! What have you done?
Colonel, let me see.
Anyone else want to stop me leaving? I walked all the way from the barracks to the inn, with Fosca cradled in my arms, attracting the bewildered stares of children out playing in the snow. The exposure to the elements could not have been good for Fosca's health, but her face wore the same blissful countenance as Clara's when I held her hand on that carriage ride in Porta Magenta. What madness had taken possession of me? All the things that the Colonel said about Fosca's character were harshly expressed, but ultimately true. And although his violence was uncalled for, I had once struck out at her in anger myself, so why was I so upset? The only answer I could think of was that I did in fact love Fosca. But how could that be? That made no sense at all. But then again, is love supposed to make sense? Had I not raged against Clara for her sensible, rational model of love? Hang the sense of it. Though I knew that I would surely be damned for this, at that moment it felt so right, as if the entire world was deranged and we too were the only sane people in it. I sublimated my intellect completely to my instincts, booked a room at the inn for Fosca and myself, and sat her down beside a roaring fire. You warm enough, Fosca? Do you need another blanket?
No, I'm quite toasty right now. Thank you, my love. Giorgio?
Yes?
You really meant what you said before? You didn't just say it because I was so wretched because you felt sorry for me, or because you were angry at my cousin?
No, Fosca, I meant every word of it.
But how can you love me? What? Why? Why on earth?
It is as I've said. No one in my entire life has been as honest to me. No one has opened their heart to me as completely. There is nobody on earth whose loyalty and devotion I can be more certain of. No one has challenged me, pushed me to change my life as you have.
But these changes have brought you such pain.
They were necessary. Without you, I might not have been able to see that.
Don't you still find me ugly? Repulsive?
Yes, but is love merely physical yearning? Is it not also a spiritual connection between two people? A state of caring so deeply for someone that you feel their pain as if it were your own? Please believe me. I love you, Fosca.
I believe you, Giorgio. Oh, my love, I'm so happy. But I despair for you. My cousin, he will call you out for this. And if you refuse him, then he will hunt you down. He will not stop until you are dead.
Then we must make the most of our time together.
What are you doing?
Do you trust me?
I trust you.
Then let me make love with you.
But Giorgio, you said you found me ugly.
I do. But love, true love, is blind. And if love means caring for someone so much that you feel their pain as your own, does it not stand to reason that you would feel their pleasures too?
Giorgio, I'm so weak. I'm not certain my body can withstand the strain.
Then you don't have to move a muscle. Just lie still by the fireside. I'll make love to you with my hands and with my lips.
Giorgio, if I let you see me, all of me, will you let me see all of you too?
Of course.
I place myself in your hands. I trust you will be gentle.
I helped Fosca to her feet, and piece by piece, I removed her clothing, being especially careful not to inflame her bad arm. When this was done, I took a pillow from the bed, placed it on the rug by the fireplace, and then I took Fosca in my arms, gently lowering her fragile, skeletal body down to rest. I removed my clothes and set myself down beside her. Then I indulged in what I can only describe as the most deceitful act of my life. I gazed upon her with adoration, pretending I did not see how horrendously ugly she was. I kissed her and caressed her all over her body, with the reverential solemnity of a supplicant paying homage to a goddess, lingering with exceptional tenderness upon every bruise and scar that served as a mark of her suffering in life. When this was done, I kissed Fosca in her most tender and sacred place.
Is this the sweetest dream I have ever had? Shall I wake any minute, heartbroken that it is over?
This is real. I'm here.
So you are.
No woman ever showed me more gratitude than Fosca. The word gratitude does not even begin to describe it. The words awe and wonderment don't even come close to that look in her eyes. She gazed upon me with what I can only describe as a religious ecstasy. But even that seems like an inadequate description. Does the word rapture do justice to that look? One could not help but be touched by the magnitude of such appreciation. It aroused me. God help me, I was aroused.
Oh, for me? You really do love me. Oh, Giorgio. By my hand, you shall know how I love thee.
She took my manhood in hand, her grip gentle but steady and assured. She nearly smothered me with her kisses as she did so. I surrendered myself completely to her loving touch. Fosca. The deed was done. I carried Fosca to bed, and we both fell asleep almost instantaneously from the exhaustion of this most turbulent of evenings. I will not bother to go into detail about my parting from Fosca, just as I have never beheld such beatific joy upon the face of a woman as I did that night, so I never saw such abject sorrow on a woman's face as I did the following morning. Suffice it to say that I was awoken by the sound of the doctor and the 3 lieutenants pounding on the door. When I did not rise from my bed immediately, the lieutenants proceeded to knock down the door by force. The lieutenants burst into the room, and Amado put a gun to my head. The doctor entered next, carrying a cardboard box containing my belongings and a letter from the colonel, requesting that I engage in a duel with him at sunrise the following day. Despite Fosca's hysterical wails of protest, I accepted. If he was resolved to take my life, better a bullet to the face than to the back, I reasoned. I told Fosca to return to the barracks with the others. She wept and raged against me for this, naturally, but I eventually convinced her this was the right thing to do, and as she left, I pressed into her hand the book of flowers that I had been collecting all these years. Something to remember me by, in case we never met again. The doctor helped her to dress, and then he escorted her out with the help of Lieutenants Piastra and Vallone. Lieutenant Amado spat in my face before taking his leave of me. I spent the rest of the day drinking half a bottle of scotch, cursing fate, composing this letter to you, and putting the fragments of Fosca's memoirs in some semblance of order to send along with it. I wish I had time to finish this chronicle off with some profound observation regarding the human condition and how these incidents serve to illuminate that. But I am exhausted from all this writing. I can't think of a satisfying way to conclude this tale, and I only have half an hour to get to the post office before it shuts. I will just say that I have never known greater love in all my life. And if I die tomorrow, then I die for love. Many is the time I have risked my life for the empty promises of a corrupt state. If I had died then, my life would have been meaningless. But to die for love, that is to have truly lived. There, how's that for profundity? I can think of no finer sentiment with which to conclude this letter. Your unworthy friend, Giorgio.
You're late, Captain Farina. Are you drunk?
My apologies, Colonel. I didn't realize you were in a hurry to die this morning.
Please, Captain, there is no need to be rude. There's no need for any of this. Listen to me, both of you. I mean, we're all reasonable adults here. We can work...
Reasonable, Doctor? I think we've gone well beyond reason now, or at least I know I have. There's only one way to settle this.
I agree. What will it be, swords or pistols?
The cold will likely stiffen our wrists before too long, so sabres wouldn't be very practical. I suggest that we use pistols.
Done.
Stop this, please!
You're here as a witness to see that this is done honourably. That's all you have to do. If you can't manage that, then maybe you should just go and let us resolve this dishonourably.
Have you totally lost your mind?
Quite possibly. No thanks to you. Just bring us the guns. We can get this over with.
Very well, gentlemen. You know how this works. Back to back, 10 paces. 1 shot each. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
"30 years have elapsed since I first received this letter, and I commit no indiscretion in publishing it now. The man who wrote these words has departed from this world. The remainder of those still living, whose alleged deeds are related in this narrative, are quite well aware of my intentions in going to press, their position in life too secure to be affected by this slight epistle, which is so extraordinary in its particulars as to beggar belief. I knew from first-hand experience that Captain Farina was a man of exceptional courage, capable of the most noble and generous kindness. But for all his admirable qualities, the man's soul was clearly a turbulent, divided one, as this miniature memoir attests. On one page he professes with absolute certainty that living is what matters most, and on another he rants about the glory of dying for love. I was grieved to read of my dear friend's decline, but at the same time I fumed with rage at his bald-faced hypocrisy. The disingenuous way he began the letter in a confessional tone, only to then relate the details of his various sexual exploits with unrepentant exhibitionism, clumsily attempting to portray his debauchery as something of profound spiritual significance. The flowery language he used to try and convince me that two fallen women were worthy of being considered romantic heroines was just as embarrassing and deplorable. His incredibly poor understanding of politics and history also grated on my nerves. I must concede it was an impressively articulate account of his life, given that he wrote it over the course of a few hours and was drunk at the time. But that is all the praise I can bestow upon him. I laughed out loud at the passage where Giorgio criticizes Fosca's memoirs for being excessively sentimental, melodramatic, and immodest. A more blatant example of the pot calling the kettle black I have yet to see. Fortunately, I was not called upon to give a character reference on behalf of my friend. There was no great commotion about town in the wake of the duel, no press interest in the event whatsoever. In this, as in many other situations, Giorgio had overestimated his own importance. Fortunately for both men, their wounds were not mortal. The colonel's bullet grazed the side of Giorgio's scalp and took off the top of his ear. Giorgio's bullet broke one of the colonel's ribs, but did not penetrate through to any vital organs. As soon as the ministry heard of this duel, they offered the colonel an appointment as a civil engineer in the construction of a canal through the isthmus. Upon regaining his strength, the venerable old soldier departed for the sewers. I confronted Clara in private, and convinced of her genuine remorse, I gave her the incriminating letter, along with Fosca's memoir. Perhaps I shouldn't have done this, but at that moment I just wanted those documents and all the responsibility they entailed out of my hands. Fosca was entrusted to the care of an old friend of her mother's. She died 3 months after her night of passion with Giorgio. If he saw her again in that time, I do not know. What I do know is that Giorgio returned to the bosom of his native village, reconciled with his family, and that under his stewardship the family estate yielded profitable, though not plentiful, harvests for 5 years straight. Following the death of his parents, Giorgio left the farm in the care of his sister and signed up for work as a deckhand on a merchant ship. Eventually, once he had accumulated sufficient knowledge and experience, he became captain of his own vessel. In all his travels throughout the 7 seas, the man never found a woman that he could devote his life to, and every year he would make an annual pilgrimage to the ruined temple by the lake, upon which Fosca decreed her ashes were to be scattered. He would also visit Clara at least once every year. Her son did indeed come to regard him as Uncle Giorgio, and she remained friends with him until his untimely demise 6 years ago. Giorgio's ship was caught in a violent storm, and he succumbed to a bad case of pneumonia. The ship's crew reported that the last word Captain Farina uttered before leaving this world was Fosca's name. The funeral was at sea, but a separate memorial service was held in his honour on land. Clara played piano and performed a song whose melody was derived from a composition by Fosca. Clara went to great lengths to ensure that Fosca's compositions were published. It must be said that they are seldom performed, and that critical reaction upon their initial publication was mixed at best. Still, they have attracted a following of sorts, and admirers of Fosca's music tend to be a fiercely passionate lot. There's something very apt in that, I find. Clara claimed never to have been unfaithful to her husband again, and that her relations with Giorgio after he left the army were strictly platonic. I am inclined to believe that, given how seriously she took her duties as a mother. But when I think of the price Giorgio and Fosca had to pay for their sins, I can't help but feel bitter that Clara got off so lightly in comparison. She continued with her artistic pursuits, and some particularly shocking paintings were exhibited under the pseudonym of C.G. Rubini, the alias derived from her full maiden name, Clara Giulietta Rubini. One of them, Lover's Embrace, is an idealized rendering of the moment that Giorgio expressed a desire to preserve on canvas, in which she fell asleep in his arms, a solitary tear of joy coursing down her cheek. The more provocative Trust shows an emaciated, deformed woman lying naked by a blazing fire, clearly inspired by Fosca. Of course, many of the works that Clara created as Rubini aren't directly inspired by real-life events, but her sympathetic depiction of the ill and deformed in much of her work, I feel, was influenced by her exposure to Fosca's story. She led a life of great comfort and ease, with a loving husband. Both her infidelity and scandalous artistic alter ego remained unknown during her lifetime, and she remained uncommonly beautiful right up to the point where she, quite suddenly, died of a heart attack last year. She was 56, and seemed perfectly healthy at the time. She wasn't even doing anything greatly strenuous. It is said that she was out enjoying a pleasant stroll in the park when a gust of wind blew off her hat. She ran to retrieve it, and her heart just gave out. I suppose she did indulge in a diet of very rich foods, and had a weakness for fine wine and cigars, more so than is healthy in a woman. Still, it came as a profound shock to everyone who knew her. When she died, I once again became the custodian of this letter. Clara's husband told me that he had long suspected her of being unfaithful to him, and was fully aware of his wife's artistic double life as well, but had forgiven her these transgressions long ago. Such was the depth of his love, that he was willing to accept her, damaged though she was. Anything just to have her by his side. I still can't make up my mind if that is an admirable sentiment or not. In any case, he urged me to publish these documents. In a world where everything dies, where everything slips from our grasp, we take most delight in what we have lost. The pleasures we lament are not those that commence, but those which conclude. My friends, who loved not wisely, but too much, who are now beyond my help, and I dare say beyond the grace of God. It is a comfort to know that they will endure in some fashion, even if they are ultimately despised, in the memories of those who read their story. Salvatore Venuti, Milan, 1900.